Hey everybody, and Tony here with a review of Bellini's La Straniera, which had its premiere at the Staatsoper Schiller Theater with Peter Valentovich on the podium alongside Edita Gruberova, Sonia Ganassi, Jose Bros, Alfredo Daza, Jan Martinik, and Jonathan Winnell, and the chorus being the Staatsoper Chor with Frank Flade as the chorus master and the orchestra being the Staatskapelle Berlin. Now, for those of you who don't know who Vincenzo Bellini is, he's basically well known for his opera Norma, which was a vehicle for a lot of dramatic coloratura sopranos, spinto sopranos, and dramatic sopranos, like that of Maria Callas, Joan Sutherland, Gina Chigna, Claudia Muzio, Elena Moshuk, Edita Gruberova, and Maria Ladevia. So he's basically very well known for this work and has been performed a lot more than his other operas and internationally. And his earlier works were quite obscure, those being Adelson e Salvini, Bianca e Gianando, Il Pirata, Taira, and of course La Straniera, though his later works like Capuletti e Montechi, Sonambula, Norma, Beatrice di Tenda, and Puritani had some great successes internationally and have basically been like vehicles for the likes of Maria Callas and Joan Sutherland, while Capuletti and Montechi being also a vehicle for Beverly Sills and Renata Scotto. So he basically also led a very short life as a composer as he, well, passed away at the age of 35 due to health complications, and also a very challenging one because, like I said, some of his operas did have some mediocre successes to the point where they ended up being quite obscure all the way up to, let's say, the 50s, 60s, or 70s, or even 80s. And some of his other operas, mostly his later works, had a very huge following. Well, most notably Norma. And he was also one of the like most popular bel canto composers alongside Gaetano Donizetti and Gioacchino Rossini, and also that of Giuseppe Verdi early in his career. So basically, the story of La Straniera, it's basically a melodrama. It starts off as a sort of innocent love story between the Count Arturo and his love Isoletta and their upcoming marriage, and then he meets this stranger who is known as Alaide, and he also is in love with her. And a lot of strange things ensue, like a love triangle, lost identities, and let's just say that the writing of this opera is a huge mess. I mean, you have a lot of convoluted things happening, lost identities, things revealed at the last minute through exposition, and of course, well, the anti heroine, well, not getting her happy ending and going completely bonkers in the end. And, well, and also a broken friendship and a lot of other things that just can't really have a certain amount of cohesion with this opera. But despite the flaws in its writing, well, the music is still gorgeous. What more can you expect from bel canto or from the bel canto era with the likes of Bellini, Donizetti, Rossini, early Verdi, and Mercandante, and many, many other composers of that era? You still at least get very wonderful music and very beautifully sung arias, whether they come from Arturo, Valdeburgo, Isoletta, and of course the stranger of the title, Alaide, or Queen Agnes. Oh, and speaking of that, and the fact that she's revealed to be Queen Agnes at the end was, well, like I said, extremely convoluted. But like I said, despite its convoluted story with plot holes abound and a lot of coincidences, lost identities, and all that stuff, and not to mention the fact that Valdeburgo is fatally wounded, yet somehow gets back to life, all because he says, "Oh, God saved him," and all that stuff. is sort of heavy handed and just simply came out of left field. But like I said, despite that, it still has very beautiful music and very wonderful arias. And let's get on with the singers, since this is mainly a concert version of this opera. So, starting with Edita Gruberova as the title heroine or anti heroine Aleide, she still has that shimmer in her voice. Granted, it didn't have that same luster like it did years ago because, well, I also saw her as Lucrezia Borgia and Elisabetta from Roberto de Vereux. But she still has those really wonderful high notes that are piercing and just simply put sharp like daggers, and she had a tremendous stage presence. She was simply put a stage animal from beginning to end, and she always is a stage animal. Her acting is very tremendous. She has a great flair for drama. However, as I've also noticed, well, in a lot of the productions that I've watched Edita Gruberova and also some clips of her on YouTube, her low notes are not that great. They sound really forced, but it's a small price to pay for such artistry that Madame Gruberova gives in the repertoire that she's very well known for, and that's the bel canto repertoire. It's no wonder why she is hailed the queen of bel canto, because she has a great flair for drama, great high notes, and she's very expressive all throughout in her singing. Yes, her low notes may not be something to recommend or even to write home about, but still, her great flair for drama and the fact that she was able to make Aleida, well, a very somehow shrewish yet somehow sympathetic character was just simply put involving. It's helped by her wonderful technique, especially with those high notes. I mean, they just continue to knock me off my seat every single time. And, well, it was just wonderful. What more can you expect from Madame Gruberova? She still is able to give such a wonderful portrayal of Aleida, or Queen Agnese, even though she's currently 68 years old, but she's still going strong, and I'm sure that I'll hear her for another 10 or 20 years. And this really shows that she is absolutely committed to her artistry, and it's just simply put very exciting to see her perform this role with such finesse and such flair. Singing her lover, the Count Arturo, was Jose Bros. Now, for those of you who don't know who Jose Bros is, he's basically a tenor who specializes in a lot of the lyric tenor repertoire of Mozart, Bellini, Donizetti, Rossini, and some Verdi, though later on in his career he's basically done some roles in the spinto tenor repertoire, like Don Alvaro from Forza del Destino, Ricardo from Ballo and Mascara, and also the title role of Don Carlo, well, all of them by Verdi. Wow, what a voice he had. Sure, I did catch him in a few clips of Puritani, though they were basically few and far between. He had a very wonderful voice, and let me just say that this was a huge pleasure to see Monsieur Bros live. It was simply put a very great and very scintillating instrument that he had. He also had a huge flair for drama as well, but it's his voice that sold it for me. When he sings lyrically, he sings it very lyrically and with a very solid technique that was just simply put wonderful. He had a very golden tone in his voice, also evidenced in his high notes. He sings his high notes with such abandon. In fact, he sings his role with such abandon and with such style and poise and clarity. His high notes were so clarion that I was just simply put, well, awestruck. My heart literally stopped every time he sung his notes. He had such a finesse that made his character so alive, and just hearing him live, just it basically filled the opera house. And it was a huge pleasure watching Monsieur Jose Bros sing this role live at the Staatsoper Schiller Theater, and I really can't wait to see more of him because this is a tenor that, well, had a very established career somewhere in the late 80s, early 90s, and mid 90s, and has established himself as one of the greatest lyric tenors of this era, and has still continued to sing to this very day, even though it's in the more spinto tenor repertoire. And he still is able to excel. Those years of singing a very vast repertoire has done wonderfully for his voice, has done a lot of wonderful things for his voice that I was so awestruck. I was simply put glued to my seat. My jaw was, well, open every time he sung those high notes and every time he really, like, got into his character and really, really let it rip. It was just simply put fabulous. So, enough gushing about Jose Bros. Let's get on to Isoleta, sung by Sonia Ganassi. Now, Sonia Ganassi has basically been very well known in the coloratura mezzo, the lyric mezzo, and some smidge of the dramatic mezzo repertoire. Her well known roles include Rosina from Barbiere di Siviglia, Angelina from Cenerentola, Isabella from L'Italiana in Algeri, Niklaus from Tales of Hoffmann, Charlotte from Werther, Carmen from Carmen, Eboli from Don Carlo, Venena from Nabucco, and most recently she has sung the lights of Santuzza from Cavalleria Rusticana, and Amneris from Aida, and a lot more Ebolis from Don Carlo. And she's also sang the likes of Elisabetta from Maria Stuarda, and I also read that she also sang Valentine from Les Huguenots, and has also sang Idamante from Idomeneo, and Dorabella from Così fan tutte. Now, she specializes in a vast repertoire, as evidenced when she sung Isoletta. Now, the thing about Isoletta is that she's supposed to be sung by a lyric mezzo who contrasts with the dramatic coloratura soprano of Aleide. Now, think of Isoletta as a sort of Adalgisa, Giovanna Seymour, Olga, or even that of those younger mezzo type characters who serve, or even like Dorabella, who serve as like the sort of younger ingenue type of characters to the more grand, gorgeous, and, well, prima donna, dramatic coloratura, well, sopranos like Anna Bolena or Fiordaligi and all those type of other soprano roles. So hearing her as Isoletta was such a pleasure. I have seen a couple of clips of Sonia Ganassi singing on YouTube, whether they be Elisabetta from what do you call this? Elisabetta from Maria Stuarda and Eboli from Don Carlo, and of course some Carmen from Carmen and Charlotte from Werther, and probably a little bit of Angelina from La Cenerentola. I have to say that she has a very gorgeous voice, and hearing her live, I would have to say that gorgeosity in her voice is still there, and it's just simply put a very magnificent instrument, especially when put live. It's very homogeneous throughout all the registers. There were no cracks whatsoever. It was just simply put a very versatile instrument. When she sings lyrically, she sings it very gorgeously. And when she goes dramatic, she goes all out with it with a very solid technique and a great flair for drama, but also, well, a lot of dedication. And, well, that's what I could see through Madame Ganassi. She had a very solid technique. She was able to play Isoletta as a very faithful young woman because even though Isoleta is a very thankless part, I mean, let's face it, Isoleta sings in like the first few moments of the first act and the middle and final moments of the second act. So it's a very thankless role for a lyric mezzo. But still, Madame Ganassi was able to pull it off very well with finesse, style, and beauty. Then we have the Valdeburgo, sung by Alfredo Daza. Yep, this is the third time that I have seen Alfredo Daza sing live on stage. And speaking of the third time, I've also seen Edita Gruberova for 3 times now, so that's a sort of record. So I've seen him last night as Giorgio Gemot, and here he is as Valdeburgo. Wow, that's a lot of work that he has. So to really hear him sing this challenging role for a lyric dramatic baritone or a cavalier baritone was simply put a pleasure. He still maintained that clarion voice, and his stage presence, as always, was very magnetic and just simply put, had a lot of charm, elegance, and flair. And it was just it was just awesome watching Maestro Daza on stage, as always. I mean, what more can I say about Alfredo Daza? He's absolutely fabulous at what he's doing. He has a very solid technique. He has a very fantastic flair for drama, and he was just simply put fantastic throughout the evening. His tone, as always, was homogeneous throughout all the registers, and when he sang that high A flat and his G's, I was just simply put like awestruck. I was just simply put awestruck. My heart stopped, and it was just simply put a very wonderful instrument that he had, and he sang it with such authority, finesse, and just simply put a certain gusto that he had when making this come to life. And then we have the basso roles of the Signore di Montolino and the Prior, who was sung by Jan Martinic, who I've seen a lot of times at the Staatsoper Theater, well, last night as the Dr. Grenville from La Traviata. He's still able to maintain that gorgeous, lush, round, rich, authoritative basso voice, and he was very authoritative in both of these roles, as thankless as they are. Because let's face it, the Lord of Montolino only appears in the first act, and the Prior only appears in the second act. So he basically made the best of these two thankless basso nobile roles, and he sang that with just a very fine technique all throughout the evening. And then we have another thankless role sung by Jonathan Winnell, and that is the role of Osburgo. And let me just say that even though his part was short, Jonathan Winnell still maintained that very gorgeous lyric tenor voice, and he was just in his element when singing in this role. It's not really a huge role, but he managed to bring out the best of this character and really make him loyal, but still it's his voice, his lyric tenor voice that has sold it for me. And the conducting done by Peter Valentovich was, well, really good. Granted, it was a weak start at the beginning because I expected a lot more punch, but he got better and better. I mean, it was supposed to have a little bit more intensity and a lot more vivacity to it. As it is, it's okay. It's good as he managed to keep the orchestra moving. And the chorus, well, they basically helped the conductor, Maestro Valentovich, with his job, and they sung homogeneously, and even the orchestra did their part very well. So overall, this was simply put outstanding. Now, what an outstanding premiere this was, And I thought I was not going to make it because, well, this was the premiere, and usually premieres of certain operas do tend to get sold out because of like the star-studded cast. But overall, I definitely enjoyed my evening, and I have to say that everyone did fabulously. So a huge kudos to all of them, to Maestro Valentovich, to Madame Gruberova, to Monsieur Bros, to Madame Ganassi, to Monsieur Datha, Monsieur Martinique, Monsieur Wenel, and to Monsieur Flada, and to everyone else who participated. A huge round of applause. And you know what? They all received such a standing ovation, especially Gruberova. It really goes to show that she truly has lived to her title as the Queen of Bel Canto, and with really great reason. She was really the star of the evening, and rightfully so. In fact, I would go out of my way and say that everyone did fabulously, and this was just simply put wonderful. And I also can't wait to see a production of this opera. Granted, it was a concert version, but I really can't wait to see a full fledged production. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in next week with a review of Verdi's Nabucco, which will be shown at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. So until then, good night, everybody.